And I think it's affected how I work in quite a few ways. So that's one of them, being more aware of the kind of impact of my work on me. But how I work is different as well. Like even just some of the small things, I'm standing up talking to you now on this podcast. Even something like that, I'm much more aware of not being hunched over the keyboard, of kind of standing up, or sitting out in the garden on the laptop working out there. Again, it's kind of this move towards realizing that we're not separate to nature, we're a part of nature. So the more I'm in nature, even if it's on the laptop, the better I feel.
Welcome to episode 101 of the Digital Mindfulness Podcast. I'm your host, Lawrence Ampofo. Joining me today is Níall Ó Murchú. In this episode, Níall talks to us about his wide-ranging career in digital and how the Wim Hof method helps him to vastly improve the quality of his digitised personal and professional lives. Stay tuned also for the chance to win free tickets to one of Níall's incredible Wim Hof workshops in Dublin. But first of all, welcome to the Digital Mindfulness Podcast, where we bring you the best teachers and thought leaders from around the world to discuss how time well spent digitised experiences can help improve human society and the world at large. If you're new to our show, then the best place to find out much more about us is digitalmindfulness.net, where you'll find a collection of some required listening podcasts where we discuss everything from digital wellness to persuasive technologies, behaviour design, and much, much more. So enjoy the show with Níall Ó Murchú. Níall, thank you so much for joining Digital Mindfulness today. I'm really, really happy we were able to get you on the show because I know just how busy and successful you are now. So thanks again for coming on the show and welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's taken us a few goes to get it right, but here we are.
And I just want to say, audience, that's not strictly my fault. So Níall, I wonder, for the people who don't currently know you, but I'm sure they will, I wonder if you could give people just a sense of yourself and just talk about your journey really to the Wim Hof method, but also how you're managing to balance that with your very connected profession.
Ooh, good question. I'll take the first bit first. So how I got involved in Wim Hof was, I suppose, like a lot of people a couple of years ago, I was feeling the strain from, as you said, a kind of very connected life. My day job was in the digital world, and I was raising 4 children, great wife to support me, but the kind of career and being a good husband and a good father, I was starting to it was starting to wear a little bit. I was kind of looking after myself, but the cracks were definitely starting to show. A little bit stressed, a little bit run down, and then I was watching Joe Rogan podcast, and the next guest up was this wild-looking man called Wim Hof with a long beard and long hair. And I started listening to what he was saying, and he was talking about his nearly miraculous world record of staying in ice for 2 hours, running up Kilimanjaro in a pair of shorts. And what really struck me about what he was saying was that he was doing that by just simply breathing and a little bit of cold exposure, building up to these big events. And by that, he was kind of making himself stronger. He was increasing his immunity, and then he could do all these amazing things. So, and what really got me was Wim Hof was saying that anyone could do it. So that's what kind of got me involved, and I kind of started trying it then. It immediately had an effect on me. Within 3 weeks, I felt like a different person. Within 3 months, I had the energy to leave my old job, start 2 new businesses, and one of them being a Wim Hof instructor. So thanks to good old Wim Hof, here we are. So that's the first part of the question, Lawrence. But you also asked me how do I balance Wim Hof and digital. I think for me they're a perfect fit because I know I can feel when I've been looking at a screen for too long, or concentrating on spreadsheets for too long. So for me, Wim Hof method allows me to feel nature more because we're breathing, We're getting into the cold. We're using nature to rediscover our own nature. And I think for me that works very well, because I need to get away from the screen. And why not jump in the sea or into a waterfall or into an ice bath and feel great for a while?
So Níall, let's talk about the Wim Hof method a little bit more, because I'm really intrigued by this, but I think it's also a little bit fuzzy for people that might not be as aware of it. So what exactly is the Wim Hof method, and how I guess physiologically, how do people get all of these amazing benefits that the wild man Wim, as you said, gets himself?
Yeah, so the first thing, when I look back at how I discovered it, I remember the first day I downloaded the manual. There's a 10-week online course you can do, and I was doing the 10-week online course, and as part of that I downloaded the manual. And when it was printing off, I started doing the breathing exercise. So there's a basic kind of very simple breathing exercise, and within about 3 breaths I felt completely different already. And then I kind of did it for the next few days and then what was happening to me, I was full of energy waking in the morning. When I woke up in the morning, I wasn't feeling tired like I had been. When I woke up in the morning, I felt great. I felt loose and I felt light. And what was happening was that when we're stressed, when I was stressed or under pressure, our breathing becomes quite shallow. So what Wim Hof method does is it gives you time, maybe 10, 15 minutes to take out of the day, and you do these beautiful big breaths, and then you're letting go, and again and again and again. And then we do something quite special at the end. And what it does is it takes the respiratory system on this whole range of movements. So we have lots of oxygen, no oxygen, high CO2, no CO2. And it's a workout for the entire respiratory system. And then what happens is when it goes from one extreme to the other, it finds its own balance. So what I was finding is that my breathing was then really good for the rest of the day. So everything was starting to work right down to cell level. So the mitochondria in the cell who create the energy for us, they were getting the oxygen they need, or I need, to produce all the energy. So I was feeling more energy. So one big part of it is the breathing part. And the other part is then a little bit of exposure to the cold. So what I was doing was a little bit of breathing, and then after my normal warm shower, I'd turn on the hot cold shower for about 30 seconds. That's at the start. And what happens when you turn on the cold shower, I think you've tried it as well, Lawrence, it takes your breath away because it's so cold. You're like, oh, and you're kind of, and you're breathing really fast, and your heart rate goes up. Yeah. So what you learn to do then is you learn to breathe and relax in the cold. It's like a stress. So when you breathe and relax in the cold, and you can get your breath under control, it actually takes us from full fight or flight mode down to rest and digest mode. And again, it's this range of motions by kind of working out the nervous system, working out the brainstem, balances the hormones, elevates our mood, makes the respiratory system stronger, improves our circulation, lots of other things as well. But the end result is, I remember my wife describing when she was doing it with me when we started, and she got into the sea in the middle of December in Ireland. It was freezing, and she'd been doing she'd been training Wim Hof for a few weeks, and she got out of the sea, and she's only small, and she said, I feel I can lift up a car, and that's the kind of power and the kind of the feeling and the energy you get when you come out of the cold. And so it was a great example for me to see someone like Josie feel so empowered by it, and that's another reason I like it, because when I'm teaching, people go home and they can immediately practice it. It's really simple. It has proven results, and they feel better. They feel stronger, and they feel happier, and they feel healthier. And that's kind of important to me, because ultimately I want to teach as many people as possible how they can do this for themselves.
It's really, this is of course like really fascinating, and more so I think because it's backed up by science, by rigorous science. But everything that you're just describing now, how the tenseness and the tightness from your daily life, being in terms of your career in digital, how by taking these just simple 3 breaths, how that had such an effect on you. And would you say that, are you still very conscious? Are you still very deliberate about your breathing, or is it still a process for you that you have to come
No, well, my background would have been that martial arts would have been my background, and then yoga would have been after martial arts. So my interest has always been on breathing and how it controls our nervous system and how it makes us feel. So I have a lot of experience in that. But now adding in Wim Hof breathing on top of that has totally changed my understanding of it, where often, say, different types of Qigong breathing or pranayama breathing is very complex and very difficult to kind of get right. What I love about this is that it's so simple and easy. And then that means that during the day, not that I'm thinking about my breath all day long, but if I feel any kind of strain or stress or anxiousness or worry or fear or anything like that, immediately I can just use the techniques that I've learned fully in, and even just concentrating on the exhale, and I can actually take control of my nervous system and how I feel. So even as an example, Lawrence, for the people listening here who are thinking, how the hell do you do that? Very simply, just breathe in. Lawrence, you do it. I'll coach you, Lawrence. Now, they can't see you. So take a big breath in and a long, smooth exhale. And again, nose or mouth, it doesn't matter. Long, smooth exhale. And for people listening to this, as they do it as well, big breath in, long, smooth exhale. Now, the long, smooth exhale triggers the vagus nerve that sits up in the middle brain there and goes right down into our belly. And that actually reduces our heart rate immediately. It gets us into this kind of relaxed state immediately. So that's what I kind of use, simple techniques like that during the day. So any of the listeners who have just done 3 big breaths and a nice relaxed exhale, they're actually taking control of their nervous system and how they feel just by doing that.
I must say to everyone listening that I did email Níall, I think last week when I was about to do a keynote speech at a conference, and I was emailing him. There were nervous tweets to him that, Níall, I'm nervous, but I think I'm excited. And he coached me into doing this breathing. And I must say, Níall, it was fascinating because I really did calm down.
Yeah,
I really did. Even the types of thoughts I was having were not directed towards fear. I was much more focused on the content itself. And I really do think it affected the delivery, my delivery, because the delivery in the end was good. And I kind of felt a bit more powerful as opposed to fearful. So,
yeah. And that makes sense, because when we're faced with something very uncertain or something that's putting us under pressure, our whole body changes. Our breathe and the mind controls the lungs, and the lungs control the breath, and the breathing controls the nervous system. So we can decide to allow that pressure to make our breath shallow and our heart rate go up and all those things that happen. Or we can say, okay, hold on a second, I'm actually going to breathe out really slowly and reverse that, and tell the mind to control the lungs, to control the breath, to control the nervous system. And it works. And it's nice and simple.
So Níall, deep breathing is one thing, and activating our vagus nerves is absolutely fantastic. But the cold, I've got to talk to you about the cold. How would you recommend people start to acclimatize themselves to experiencing the benefits, the amazing benefits that we get from the cold? Because I hear you talking about yourself and your wife going swimming in the Irish Sea in the middle of December, and I must say that terrifies me. It doesn't sound like fun at all. But then you watch the Vice documentary about Wim Hof, and you even look at your workshops, and people seem incredibly blissful and happy in the cold, and it just seems like they're getting all of these incredible benefits. But I know that certainly for myself, that same flight response would come in. What earth are you doing, Lawrence? So can you talk about
the reason I was laughing when you mentioned the cold there, because so many people ask me about this because they're terrified of the cold. And I can absolutely understand it. Like, before I started doing Wim Hof as well, I wasn't particularly great in the cold. Like, I always swam in the Irish Sea, but it was an unpleasant experience. The joy of it was when you got out and you'd survived, So, and in the cold, and our approach to cold is always really gradual. It's never forced, and it's always building up really, really slowly. So the interesting thing is, in the workshops, we go into it in depth, and we have the ice baths, and we're kind of learning under a kind of very safe and supervised way in how to get into something like the ice bath. But what interested me is that before the workshops, a couple of people always come up to me and say, look, I can't get into the cold, which is absolutely fine. We're never forcing anything. And by the time they go through the process, they're the ones I have to pull out of the ice bath because they're jumping back in. So once they get a taste for it, the fear is gone. But loads of people have fear of the cold, and I think it actually delves deeply into it, draws on other fears and worries in parts of their lives.
It's a primal fear, isn't it?
It's because it keeps you alive. Like if we're lying out there in the cold in the freezing cold, we'd be dead pretty soon if we don't know what we're doing. So, but the thing is to start gradually. So anybody there listening at home saying, okay, I don't want to get an ice bath, no one has to. But what I would suggest is at the end of your hot shower, let's even start with 5 seconds cold. Feel what it gives you energy. It immediately changes the circulation system, improves it, and immediately changes how you feel. Just try 5 seconds at the end of your cold shower. And then after you do that, maybe go up to 10, maybe up to 15 seconds. And the whole objective of it is that you're trying to get your breathing, you're trying to relax in the cold. So just a little bit, even if saying somebody's there, oh, I can't do 5 seconds, even 1 second, and just build a little dash of cold. It's to try and build it up, because one of the underlying principles is that we are built for survival. We have evolved over how many millions of years, and we are built to survive. Our ancestors, lived in really harsh conditions, and we have inherited this body and this nervous system and this way of thinking that is built to survive that. And for a lot of people these days, their lives are so comfortable. They go from buildings that are too warm to cars that are too warm to offices that are too warm, and back again and back again and back again. So what we're trying to say is a little bit of discomfort, not much, 5 seconds. We need that to kind of ignite these superpowers that we have inside us. We need a little bit of discomfort. We need to learn how to be comfortable in discomfort. And if that means 5 seconds in a cold shower every day, the benefits far outweigh that 5 seconds in the cold shower.
So, Níall, would you say then that by really leaning in to the whole Wim Hof method, has that helped you? Because you mentioned before that you felt a bit overwhelmed, I mean, you've still got 4 children. They're still here. Right? You've got your businesses now. So I mean, arguably you're doing more. But yes, would you say that the Wim Hof method has helped you bear all of the pressures that you were feeling, or even? Yeah.
It's totally changed me. There's no doubt about that. So one of the big things I was struggling with before was levels of energy. I was just kind of tired all the time. Now I've had to change my life to deal with the amount of energy I have. So sometimes I feel like I have so much energy that I can run and jump and fly off up through the roof. And so what I have to, and the reason I say I have to change my lifestyle a bit. Now every morning after I get the children out to school, before I start, whatever the day entails, whatever work entails, I go down to the beach here at the end of the street and I train for a while on the beach, movement, yoga, running, swimming, whatever it is, to get that energy out. So that's one big thing, way more energy. The other thing is immunity. I used to get sick. A cold would lead to a chest infection, would lead to antibiotics, would lead to 2 weeks out. I haven't been sick in years, and I feel, and there's a freedom in that, because I think to myself, okay, I don't have to worry about if it's raining and I get soaked wet. I'm not going to get a cold. Because if I feel it coming, I just go home, do a little bit of breathing and fight it off. And this is one of the big things that got my attention when I first heard Wim talking about the Wim Hof method, was when they injected him with E. coli. And he was able to, in the medical university there I'm going to mispronounce this, in Radboud University in Holland, they injected him with E. coli. Through the method, he was able to fight it off. And that's astounded the medical community. And that was why, we can say it improves your immune system. So then they asked Wim, could he train normal people? Because Wim is the anomaly. He's the one that can run up the mountains in shorts. And within a few days, Wim could bring a group of people in and that hadn't done it before, and they could fight it off as well. So that was one of the things that got my attention, and that's one of the things that I now feel. I now feel my immune system and my ability to fight things off is so much stronger. And of course, then that has a huge effect in your life. The level of energy has a huge effect in your life. And the other interesting thing, Lawrence, that I've learned from nature, and nature represented by the cold, is to let go of things, loosen control over things. Because when you're up to your neck in ice in a river in Poland, or something like that, you can't fight the cold. You have to relax. You have to surrender a little bit. You kind of have to let go. So for me, that was one of the kind of metaphysical lessons beneath all the other stuff, is that it has allowed me to kind of be more open to life unfolding in front of me, rather than trying to control, or I need to do this at this time and this goal and this. It's like I've learned how to kind of let things go, and it's kind of an unusual experience. The more I relax into it, because you said leaning into it, and and I'm doing the opposite. I'm leaning back. I'm letting it all unfold, and the more I do that, the more successful I've become. Which is unusual for me to think that way, because I would have been very goal driven and objective driven. But that's part of the process as well. Everyone finds their own in the ice, in the cold, in those moments where it's just you and yourself and the breathing. You kind of find out some truths about yourself.
Have you exposed your family? Well, no, let me start that question again. So have you brought
the children in the ice bath?
yeah. I'm wondering, I'm actually wondering how, if this is good, this whole method is good even for kids.
I think children nearly know this stuff instinctively. I think we know this stuff instinctively. So watching my 4 children grow up, is a real privilege. And one of the things that I noticed is you can't keep clothes on children. You can't keep a jacket on them. They're running outside in the wintertime, throwing their jacket off, throwing their shoes off. And for beforehand, I would have been saying, oh, put your jacket on, put your coat on, you'll get a cold. Now I understand that they're actually built, they have so much energy, and children are kind of, their temperature is slightly higher than ours, and you can see it in them. So children naturally know, when they're cold and when they're not. So if they're cold, they'll come back and ask for the coat. But now now I'm letting them run with no coats on, and their immunity is much stronger. They're not getting sick half as much anymore. Now I'm not getting them and throwing them in the ice baths. If they want to put their hand in the ice or something, because children are curious, they can absolutely do that. But they put their foot in, they put their hand in, and that's enough. They know how to breathe. When their babies are young, the breathing is really natural. It comes to them. It's when we get a little bit older that we kind of lose that. So with our older children, I do a little bit of breathing with them, because our oldest boy is 9, and he's becoming more aware of himself and more aware of life. So if things are a little, if he's kind of upset about something, I teach him how to breathe deeply, and then he can kind of deal with those scenarios. And the converse is true. When the children see me doing deep breathing, they know they're in real trouble, because it's like, uh-oh, Dad's doing Wim Hof breathing. We must have pushed him to the limit here.
So I'm really interested in the link between, of course, your digital life and Wim Hof, but also the way that you're now working with clients. Now that you spoke about this whole thing of leaning back and, not trying to be in control, not being so goal oriented all the time. But I'm wondering, has Wim Hof impacted the way that you are connected yourself
with clients, or
I don't know, I guess the way that you would advise people, and also the way that you practice being connected as well?
Yeah, it has, I suppose. What it has helped me do is, one of the big things that Wim Hof method helps the body do is it's move itself. The breathing particularly moves the body from a state of acidity into a state of being more alkaline. So when the body's acidic, it's kind of not working as well as it could. When it's alkaline, it's working really well. So alkaline is very important. There's alkaline diets people go on to try and help the body heal itself. But what I find is that when you're doing lots of the breathing and a little bit of the cold, your body feels it feels better. It's in this more alkaline state. And because of that, you're more aware of what's going on in it. So where beforehand I would have kind of pushed it a little bit, digitally, or being connected with clients, or, doing too much, or looking at the screen for too long, or, when you're doing 500 emails and then you have something else going on, I would feel that more earlier now and have a little bit of a buffer to kind of take a step back and deal with that, rather than not feeling it until it's too late, until my head's sore, my eyes are sore, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, I shouldn't have taken those 10 calls and these 15 emails, So for me, it just kind of gives me much more self-awareness. And I think that's partly because everything's working a little bit better, so I can feel things more.
I think also, like, if you are doing Wim Hof, to even do the deep breathing, like, you can't be hunched over as you normally would be with a keyboard, right? You can't breathe deeply doing that. And
no. And I think it's affected how I work in quite a few ways. So that's one of them, being more aware of the kind of impact of my work on me. But how I work is different as well. Like, even just some of the small things, I'm standing up talking to you now on this podcast. Even something like that, I'm much more aware of not being hunched over the keyboard, of kind of standing up, or, sitting out in the garden on the laptop, working out there. Again, it's kind of this move towards realizing that we're not separate to nature, we're a part of nature. So the more I'm in nature, even if it's on the laptop, the better I feel.
This is great. So Níall, you're running now these amazing workshops in Dublin. And so tell us how they're all going, because just from the last estimate, you said, you're not even advertising really, although I beg to differ, because you are an Instagram superstar.
You're very kind, Lord. You're very kind. The workshops are really, they're proving to be very popular. People are interested in being able to take some power back when it comes to their health and their happiness. And they've probably seen the Vice documentary with Wim in it. They've probably seen him on Joe Rogan, or he's on these big, huge podcasts. So in Ireland, at least, people have heard of it. They've seen something about it. They want to get involved. They've read about the benefits, and they're coming looking for myself. I'm Wim Hof instructor based in Dublin here, but we have workshops all over Ireland. There's one more Wim Hof instructor, John, up in Louth in the Republic of Ireland, and there's one Scott up in Bangor in Northern Ireland. So there's three of us on the entire island, and so we're trying to get the message out to people and get them to experience it. So, and as a result of that, in Dublin, at least, with a big population on this end of the country, the workshops are selling out really, really quickly. Word of mouth helps, and like, once people have experienced the breathing, like myself, once you've experienced the breathing and then being confident to go into the cold, you know it works for you. And that's you can't ask for a higher recommendation than someone saying that to somebody else.
Níall, one of the things that again that I picked up from yourself is that when you've been in digital for a long time, and certainly in the beginning, when you were starting your career, posting content online, your own content, was something that you wouldn't do. No matter how hard that I tried to convince you, you wouldn't post your own content. That now, in the last few years, you've been posting almost daily content, and again, this is all I know driven by your practice with the Wim Hof method, but I'm really interested to know what the difference is, because again, the environment is exactly the same. It's still the online realm. It's your own content, but I'm wondering what the difference is now between not posting before and the content that you're posting now.
Yeah, I suppose beforehand, I would see privacy as being very important to people, to all people. And I think for you or I or anybody to kind of develop and grow as a person, we definitely need that space, with ourselves and our family, and not everything being out in the public domain. So even now, and I still hold that view, it's just that it's different. Like, there's a part of my life now which is my practice of the Wim Hof method, and using it to feel better and being out in nature. That's really, I think, that people who want to find out more about the Wim Hof method are really interested in. So I'm happy to share those parts of my life that I think will benefit other people. But it's still this huge parts of my life that I'll never post stuff about, because I don't really want to, or I don't think it'll kind of help people. So ultimately, that's the difference. I think privacy for us all, in whatever way it works for you, is really, or you or I or anybody, is really important. But it's just that now I have this part of my life that I think other people will benefit from. So that's why I posted up, and the reaction is good. People often say that what I put up, they've learned something from it, or they've been able to do a little bit of breathing, or it's inspired them to go walking in the forest or something. So, so for me, that means it's a success.
I think it's great. The whole idea that perhaps earlier in your career, almost like what you're searching for something to say, something that will actually help people, and being more intentional about the way that you use digital now that you've actually got something meaningful to share, means that you can share that aspect of your life. Like you say, I don't really need to know what you've had for breakfast or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
what did you have, by the way?
I'm trying to think back. Hold on, I'll post a picture of it on Instagram later on.
So Níall, I'm really interested. So now with your amazing dual, not even a dual life, because I very much see the two as natural extensions of themselves, exactly. The digital and the Wim Hof. I'm really interested to know, Níall, now, of course, the world is as connected as it's ever been, and we're only going to get more connected. But what do you think is the most important human quality? I think I know what you're going to say, but what is the most important human quality, and how do we cultivate that?
Yeah, there's a lot of answers to that question, but I think the most important one is our connection to actual humans. I think without digital communication, like you and I wouldn't be able to do this podcast. There's so many bits of information I wouldn't have been able to have gotten without digital communication. But I think it does pale in significance in comparison to actually meeting somebody, and which is not always feasible. But when you actually meet somebody and you're talking to somebody, even on the street, you bump into them, it changes you a little bit. It kind of gives you a little bit of energy, saying hello to somebody, have a little chat, and walking on. And that's why I think we've evolved in tribes and then communities. And I think people are finding their tribes through the digital world, which is great. Like, I talk to people about Wim Hof all over the world, because maybe our physical tribes and communities are a little bit fractured at the moment. But I think that connection with real humans, it's invaluable. That's the thing we need to cultivate more. And using digital media to do that. So like, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be going on a wild Wim Hof adventure in the depths of the forest in County Wicklow here in Ireland. We're going to be hiking down to a waterfall, jumping in the waterfall, breathing, foraging for wild growing superfoods, and having a great time. And that wouldn't be possible without digital media helping me to connect with people. But the most important part of that is the digital media, for me at least, helping me to do that, and then meeting the people and doing the actual thing in the actual forest, in the actual waterfall. So I think they both, digital and human reality, work well together. When they're out of balance, I think that causes problems.
And again, this is amazing. So we've spoken about your workshops, but also you've been really gracious enough to offer 2 free spaces to our listeners. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So we run monthly workshops, in-depth workshops here in Dublin. They are fundamentals workshops, so they give people who have very little or no experience of the Wim Hof method a chance to come and learn the basics, the fundamentals that they can then take and practice at home. So that would be breathing and focus and approaching the ice. So we have 2 free tickets to give to our August workshop here in Dublin. So if anybody is interested in getting them, what they have to do is they have to answer this question: what is Wim's last name? And you have to send the answer to me via Instagram. So if Lawrence, if you wouldn't mind putting up a link to the Breathe with Níall Instagram page, and if they just message me with that very difficult question, the answer to it, what is Wim's last name? The first 2 people will get a ticket to come to Dublin. You have to make your own way to Dublin, but the ticket to the workshop is all yours.
And from the feedback that I've seen from everyone, just these workshops literally are, they're very much life-changing. So, Níall, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Places. That's absolutely very, very generous of you. Níall, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. You just mentioned there your Instagram feed, but where can people find out more about you, the work that you're doing, and join your growing Instagram following?
So on Instagram, it's Breathe with Níall.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, being Irish, my name is spelled in a kind of odd way. So it's Breathe with, and it's Níall spelled Niall. And then the website is breathewithníall, Niall.com.
Perfect. Well, Níall, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us. I've learned so much today, and I'm sure that people listening have done so as well. Please, everyone, if you want to go to Dublin to experience one of these incredible workshops, I'll put a link in the show notes. But Níall, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure to be here.